Wubba wubba wubba. All right. I was trying to do something different. Okay, so I got just this is just gonna be ranting. I'm gonna try to stick on point, but um first off, for those that ask, the Avi is the classic, the African soldier that was brought into the Wehrmacht. I just thought it was funny. I was just looking through those, I mean, like I said in the in the stream I did with Anum Kazan. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right. So apologies if I do. Anum Kazan. Anyway, I'm not going to dig into that. But what I will say though is just when we were talking a little bit about the Germans uh, having African soldiers and how they treated black folks in Germany itself is one of those things where it's like it's a cheap appeal and it doesn't really work that well. You know what I mean? But anyway, I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I saw a good old Sev K. For those that know, Sev K is a Welshman. He's an autistic dude. He stutters a lot in regular speech, but if he really slows down and actually has a script, he can make some okay videos. Ultimately, I don't really agree with him, but he made a video about pornography, which for the most part, I will say, was pretty good. But I think that it's weird that it's he was talking about transhumanism and how he was against people living forever and they should just die off. And it's just like he called himself an atheist, and now he calls himself a Christian atheist. And it's one of these things that it just annoys me about atheism in general, because to me, atheism is a creation of the West, arguably. Um, I'm not going to sit here and get into Marxism, and no, that's too easy. But what I will say though is that atheism is a creation of the West, and it's something that, in a lot of ways, you meet atheists, and they are the real heavy scientific type folks, or they just ultimately just don't like Christianity, and that's really what it comes down to, in my opinion. They just don't like Christianity. I mean, if that's, if you just don't like Christianity, okay, just be anti-Christian then. But don't try to hide behind, oh, well, I don't like religion. And then later on, well, you know what? I'll put it this way. I'll save that point for in a minute here. But it just speaks to a larger thing, not necessarily just on Sev K. I was just using that as a segue for my point. But it's like with atheists, they get this whole mindset where it's just like, oh, we don't, well, we don't like this person, we don't like, or we don't like how Christianity is, limited women's rights or whatever the case may be. But then they'll praise Islam to a point. Like I said, once again, I'm not going to sit here and criticize Islam, but it's like, or then they'll get into Buddhism or Taoism or paganism, and they'll try to use that as like, well, I don't, it's a back door. In a lot of ways, it's very disgusting to me, where it's just like, you claim to hate religion, but then when you get older, you realize just how cringe that is. And so you end up becoming religious yourself in some way, What I was going to say is that the separation between, this is kind of schizo, so excuse me for being kind of schizo, but what I was going to say is that basically atheists can be broken apart into, these two camps, where it's just like, we don't like how daddy treated us when we were younger, or we become the scientists, And to me, the scientists ultimately become shills for capitalism to a point, where they'll be like, well, I don't like Christianity and everything else like that, but, they ultimately become shills for the capitalist system, where it's just like, well, science, does all these great things and whatnot, and we're making a lot of money, our company is, if they do like, it's a small pharmaceutical business or something like that, or they do some sort of scientific research. Maybe they work for a university or something like that, right? And to me, that's just silly. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. That was kind of a brief rant. I just feel like that's how I feel about that point. To kind of continue further, though, I want to bring up. I'm not going to show the video, but Black Red Gar and his recent video talking about the potential CW, which Civil War. That's what I mean. But basically, like I say, I I grifted that for a while. I did. I really tried to push that point in a lot of different videos and said that people are going to make their own choices and everything else. I haven't changed my stance on that because, yeah, individuals are going to make their choice and it's going to be different wherever you go. If you're in Texas, the material conditions, quote unquote, are going to be different compared to Washington State. It's going to be different. Or, if you live in, I don't know, even if you live in a big city, it's going to be different than this, or if you live in a big city, like say, okay, let's say Dallas, or more specifically, even like Louisville. And how is that going to be different compared to, I don't know, compare that to the conditions in Flower Mound, they're going to be different, So I think that there's that aspect, but on a bigger level, what I wanted to say about it is that there are some structures in the United States that do have a lot of power. And like I said, this kind of goes back to the point of the material conditions are going to be different. There are going to be the so-called loyalists to the federal government who are going to ask for support, and they are going to, they may get National Guard support, or they may get, they may get some sort of, twisted around so they get Proud Boys support or something like that. And there will be others who will openly embrace it, who will openly embrace, the breaking off and, the disintegration of the United States as a federal entity. And, they will end up making deals with China or Mexico or whoever. I mean, I'm just throwing out countries and, different interests. But to me, it's just like, we see that it's not that simple. That's why I don't really advocate it, because it's like a lot of that interest is dying down. I'll put it that way. It's dying down right now with Joe Biden. We're going to be going further into a, maybe austerity sort of neoliberal, we're, back in business sort of attitude, that's what's going to happen. And, the thing is that people will be taken down, but it'll be much more quiet, it'd be like that. It's like, once again, I always go back to that song Trap by Tupac, don't I? But yeah, all we know is silence, do the job in silence, walk the city streets like a rat pack of tyrants, And that was, I think that's what's going to happen with Biden, is that he's just going to do things more in silence. It's the same thing where a lot of folks don't talk about the fact that I'm just gonna be careful. I'm gonna try to be careful with my words. I say that every time because like I try not to be cringe, but it's like the internment camps for people from Middle America and South America. I'll put it that way, because America is a continent. It's not just the United States. I try to separate those things. But anyway, this started under Obama and Biden. And of course, people always bring that up. And, a lot of the shit lives will be like, well, it's a whole other thing. And that nobody really talked about it. The same thing when, maybe Republicans or even the Jimmy Dore sort of left will talk about, the fact that Obama deported far more, migrants than Trump did, But it's just like we're going to see this more silent sort of thing. And I think that we're going to see large parts of the left, quote unquote. And when I say the left, and I know, like I say, I mean, it is arbitrary. It is. But, you're going to see a lot of the liberals and the suck Dems not say a word about it. Now, some of the MLs, maybe your third worldists, will talk about it to a point, but they will be further marginalized. They're going to go back to, kind of this sort of, let's put out our pamphlets and let's talk on our message boards. And nobody in general will hear from them. I'll just say this in realizing that it's a complicated world. And geopolitics is a messy situation. And, while I can agree somewhat with what Black Red Guard said, where it's like, if they control and hold a base, no matter if it's left wing or right wing, and they and they do that, I just say to myself, I don't think it's that simple. It's like you had Chaz, and as much as, like I say, as much as Chaz was just cringe, ridiculousness, a lot of ways it was class collaborations. Dare I use that term? But it's like, the city allowed it to happen. That's one thing that does need to be mentioned. Jenny Durkin can go ahead and deny it all she wants to, but it's like, yeah, she allowed it to happen. There were city services that did come in and everything. People don't want to talk about that aspect of it, or the fact that, Domino's Pizza was sent in. So it's like they allowed this shit to happen because they didn't want to appear too racist or whatever. They wanted to at least give lip service to some sort of progressivism. The fact is it wasn't, though. We know that. but yeah, I'm starting to realize that it's much more complicated type of thing. And a lot of that energy is dying down. The protest stuff is already breaking up. We see that, BLM and Antifa, at least in Portland, is breaking apart. And obviously Portland has been an epicenter of, the clashes between the left and the right, with heavy, heavy quotes. But it's like, if we see it dying down there, and we see that the so-called progressive groups are breaking apart, it's a symbol of what's going on in the rest of the nation, at least to me. Excuse me for blowing my nose. But yeah, I mean, that's really my attitude to it. I think it's going to be more and more complicated as we see in time. I think that's all I have, though. I think that's all I have to say. Let me just think about it for a minute. But yeah, basically, it's more complicated than that. What I was going to say, I don't think I really talked about this a lot, but it's like there are going to be interests that may want to be loyalist to the federal government or to the state. I'm talking about the actual state. It's like the state of Wisconsin, and you're living in, I don't know, Muskogee or something like that, Muskogee, Wisconsin. I think it's Muskogee, Wisconsin. No. Muskogee is Oklahoma. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Okay. I was going to say, Green Bay, the mayor of Green Bay, are they going to allow this to happen like Jenny Durkin did? Or are they going to be loyal to the, like I say, there's multiple different levels. There's a federal level, there's a state level, then you got, the county level, and then you have the city level. And there are many, many other divisions, but these are the basic ones, and it just depends on what people are loyal to, right? They may not be loyal to the federal government, but maybe they're loyal to the mayor, or they're loyal to somebody within the city bureaucracy. And that's going to be the big difference, even in the sticks out there. So it's much more complex. I mean, to me, it's not like the Russian Revolution where it's just like, oh, well, we can overthrow and, hoorah and everything else. I think that people oversimplify it. I think that, it's much more complex than people want to think. This is why, you'll have the DSA trying to fight for that city power while also simultaneously trying to get more state and, federal power, and influencing that by having representatives in Congress, people like AOC and whatnot. Now, of course, how loyal they are to progressive values is a matter of opinion. But, you know, I think you can kind of see why they're going down that route. Yeah. Okay. I think I covered what I wanted to cover. So I hope y'all enjoy that. That wasn't too long. I'm looking at about 15 minutes. So maybe I'll even, I'm just going to air this. Apologies, though, for the dead air and everything else like that. But yeah, I said what I had to say. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. And